Welcome back to another edition of the Talking National League podcast. Episode 9 is tonight. As always, this podcast is in federation with @Non-League Bible, the number one non-league page on all of your social media platforms. So coming up on tonight's edition of the podcast, it is our big season preview. So we spoke to as many National League fans as possible, podcasters, fanzine writers on behalf of their clubs, talk about their club heading into the 22-23 season campaign. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get every fan on from every single club on this week's podcast because, to be honest, it's just too much recording and I didn't manage to do that, unfortunately. However, if you do watch these podcasts regularly, you will know that we will talk about your team in the upcoming weeks. Please remember to like and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Our aim is to get that by the end of the 22-23 season campaign. Yeah, that would be a milestone if we can do that by this time next year. So yeah, that's probably just about enough of me waffling now. So let's head into this week's edition of the Talking National League podcast. So first and foremost on the podcast, I brought in Colin, well known on the podcast. We're going to be talking a lot about Notts County heading into the 22-23 campaign. We've talked a lot about them already, but the news never stops at Notts County, isn't it? It's quite a regular trend, isn't it, Colin?
Yeah, it is. It's never a dull moment being a Notts fan, to be honest, for good and bad reasons, to be honest. And I have to say, going into this sort of season after a decent pre-season, hopes are high, but it's always going to be a roller coaster, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is, and especially for Notts County this season. There's 3 clubs that are particularly like they're strong favourites heading into next campaign, isn't there? There's Chesterfield, Wrexham and Notts County. Just heads up, we will be speaking about all 3 of those clubs later on in the podcast too. But yeah, a bit about Notts County then, a bit about the transfer business that they've done so far. It seems to be very intelligent but very impressive business, doesn't it, what they've done so far? You look at Sedwin Scott and Langstaff in 2 outstanding performances, and I've seen them impress during pre-season as well. I think both scored against Leicester too. Bajrami, I think is how you pronounce it. Yeah. At centre half, he seems to be a strong player, and Cal Cameron's still there. It seems to be a strong squad, and it feels like you're building sort of a team that's together and a set squad this season, which is something that in the previous campaign you've never really known with Notts what your best 11 is. Would you agree?
I'd agree with everything that you've just said. Yeah, I think. Since the owners took over a few years ago now, it's been very evident that we're trying to find those kind of unpolished gems, trying to recruit them, trying to give them, the experience in the National League and then be able to sell them on. And obviously we've seen a great example of that in Cal Roberts going to Aberdeen very recently for a decent sum. And so that was what the owners seem to be setting out for. One of the things I have noticed this season, and you have touched on this with some of the players that you've mentioned, is we seem to have gone for players ever so slightly older, not by much, but we're not seeing too many of the kind of the 21, 22-year-old lads coming in. We're starting to get lads who are sort of 24, 25, 26, and obviously Langstaff, Kedwin Scott, Austin as well. They all kind of fit into that kind of bracket. They've all played a decent amount of games at the National League North level, for example. Obviously had great seasons, particularly the lads at Gateshead. Yeah. So we seem to be really trying to invest in a little bit of experience as well and really trying to get those players coming to the peak of their career. Although Bajrami, I think, is a little bit of a nod back to those kind of original ideas of trying to recruit someone early 20s, someone who's had a good pedigree. I think he came through Birmingham's academy. I might have been wrong there, but coming through a really kind of good academy setup, obviously dropping out of the professional game, going into kind of the non-league National League North, and then like I say, building a fantastic reputation. And when we signed both him and Austin, the comments that we were getting from the clubs that they joined for, both of them were incredibly positive. And Bajrami mentioning even sort of championship being the possible level that he could end up, which obviously would be fantastic news for Notts.
Yeah, Austin's one that I can vouch for him being a quality player in this obviously FA Cup games. He's such a high pedigree of a sort of player, and Bajrami it seems to be a good signing as well for Notts, especially sort of that duo, isn't it? You're looking at Gates, everybody knows two together, the strikers. They brought in Austin in the midfield and Bajrami at the back. I think Notts will be very strong heading into next season. It's been, like I've mentioned, very intelligent business for me personally. One thing that I would like to mention that is a little bit on the negative side of Notts. What do you think will happen? What would you do if it does start to go wrong? And Luke Williams, he's still unexperienced. It seems like he knows what he's doing. and obviously this is unlikely, but let's say it does go wrong at Notts, you're 5th, 6th, even 7th, maybe out of the playoffs after, let's say, October time, November time. From your point of view, how would you fix it?
I'll be honest, knowing the owners, and I think it's always sort of useful to think about the context that he'll be managing in. The owners have been fairly resolute in their support of managers. I know that obviously there was a lot of kind of issues around Neil Ardley's departure, but I think it's important to remember that Neil Ardley wasn't their man in terms of, you know, when they bought the club, Neil Ardley was already the manager there, and obviously his departure raised a few eyebrows. Since then, they've been determined to stick with managers. Obviously, we had Ian Birchnell, but he's since left us to Forest Green. I think if he hadn't made that choice, he'd still be the manager now. And I think if it's going wrong, I think they'll stick with Luke Williams, to be honest. Although I have to say I've been really impressed with how he's managed pre-season and the slight tweaks and changes that we're starting to see with Notts County this season versus last season. I think they'll give him resources. You know, I think one of the things that's really recurring with Notts and looking at how they progress off the field, whenever managers mention something, they seem to get it. So Neil Ardley brought up the fact about the training ground and that not being sort of sufficient, and suddenly the owners find a really good training ground that was Forest that we rent off them, because obviously Forest have moved into their own academy setup now. You know, there's been investment in things like coaching cameras and those sort of things. So the whole of Meadow Lane and the training ground's all set up for these kind of GoPro cameras and stuff for the analysts to use. So I do think that the owners will invest in Luke Williams, and if he becomes unsuccessful, I'm sure that they'll listen to him and give him whatever he needs to get him over the line. I can't imagine that we'll make any kind of knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah, I think in the previous campaign, since they've dropped down to the National League, it's always been that consistency. You know, you go on a good run, momentum, you're thinking, Notts could actually do this, we could actually get promoted, and then that sort of like key injuries happen, and then you're going on a bad run, and it's like, oh, it's typical Notts again, you know, back to just a playoff campaign. So I think that sort of optimistic sort of feeling might be going into this campaign, but it feels like there's a lot of depth, and this is something that I think Notts will sort of thrive during those sort of winter months when you're smaller sides, and even your top sides like Southends with less depth, I should say, heading into next season, where Notts will definitely thrive, in my opinion, during them winter months, and where we will see sort of them being the true sort of strength that they potentially have. I just want to talk a bit about the identity of Notts going into next season. How do you think you're going to set up and play?
I think one of the things, I agree with you completely what you're saying about depth, and I think what adds to that sort of confidence of depth is there's a lot of flexibility as well. You know, some of the players we've already mentioned can play a number of roles, you know, so they're not brought in just to play one particular formation. You know, you've got Bajrami, for example, who can play centre half and can step up into that kind of CDM role as well. You know, we've got players like Ed Francis who can play central midfield, but also ended up at left back, I think, for Harrogate on loan early on in his career. So we've got a lot of flexibility within the squad, and I think that'll link to the tactical shapes. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about, okay, how do all these players fit together? And I think there'll be a solid base. I think we're probably going to start with those three centre halves that I know that Ian Birchnell tend to prefer. You know, with wing backs and those sort of things, and probably playing quite a narrow midfield and quite a narrow front two, with Ruben Rodriguez probably offering the kind of the width by him just doing a lot of running in those gaps. That said, one of the things that I think let us down last year was we were quite inflexible. We stuck to the same sort of situations. We never seemed to react, particularly away from home. We really struggled to have a plan B, really. You know, we played the same way, and we were a little bit predictable, I think, and teams knew how to get at us, and I think that was demonstrated aptly in the playoff eliminator against Grimsby. So yeah, I think we're going to have a few little different sort of tools to our belt, really, in terms of the way that we're going to play. Also, I think a noticeable change in the pre-season games, and I know you've got to take pre-season games with a pinch of salt, but we seem to be absolutely determined to win the ball high up the pitch. So whereas Ian Birchnell's side tended to kind of retreat, let teams have the ball, you know, we would get into shape and try and defend a little bit deeper. Williams certainly seems to want to try and win the ball very high up, press very high, you know, very energetically, win it and get shots off, which is very exciting for fans. But I must admit, it also comes with a bit of a warning sign. I think we've conceded 2 goals, admittedly, against very good opposition, Leicester and Forest, who broke through it within about 2 or 3 passes and got a shot off and scored. So Whereas I'm pleased that obviously that's been exposed, and I'm sure the Notts backroom team are working on that. That's going to be something interesting to see how it develops over pre-season and into the season itself.
It seems like quite a weird sort of summer in some sort of way for Notts County. You looked at the start of the sort of transfer window and you saw the loss of Birchwood. It's like, oh, it's game over for Notts. You also saw players that they lost, for example, Carl Wootton. I think he was sort of your goal machine, I think, perhaps heading into this previous campaign and heading into this season. But you've also kept a lot of the core of the squad. For example, Palmer's still there. I've seen him play, and I know Notts fans rave about him. He's one hell of a player in the midfield. Ruben Rodriguez seems to always score against us, but he's a special player that could definitely play at high level. And it seems like now it could be beneficial losing the likes of Carl Wootton because it allows players like Langstaff and Sedwin Scott to thrive and get game time in this sort of new Notts County sort of side as well. And yeah, I think the transition seems to be working well. And I think bringing in a new manager, which I personally feel it might have needed now, a new manager, freshen it up. I think Notts will be very strong next season. Finally, then, what Notts score prediction be heading into next season?
I think we're gonna start. I'm hopeful that we're going to start well. You know what I mean? I don't think there's going to be this kind of stuttering start that a lot of teams suffer from. Looking at Wrexham, for example, and the amount of business they've done, I'd imagine, even though they've made some really impressive signings, I think it's going to be very hard for them to get some momentum going, particularly with their recruitment that they managed late on. I think Notts will have a decent start. I'm not saying that we're going to blow teams away, but I think we're going to have a really good start and be fairly consistent. And it's about what happens, I think, getting into that kind of Christmas window. What's the squad looking like in terms of injuries? Are we able to kind of take what looks like a really stylish way of playing and an attacking way? Are we going to cope with it when pitches start to cut up? When injuries start to count? So I think that's going to be a very significant time for us. And I think also, what have we done with the money with Cal Roberts, for example? The owners have said we can invest in that. Are we going to keep it in the bank and wait until those times and invest there, or are we going to bring somebody in the next few weeks? So I'm hopeful. I mean, I still think that Wrexham are the biggest threat. I would still predict that they're going to finish top because of just simply the amount of investment they're doing, and they continue to invest. I will say, though, we've talked about managerial changes. I wouldn't be surprised if Wrexham did what Stockport did and replaced their manager, let's say, sort of November, December time, and then went on an amazing run. So, yeah, like I say, I'm hopeful, but I do think that Wrexham rightly are favourites for this season.
Yeah, I think all Notts fans are saying that and going for Wrexham to win the league. I haven't seen one Notts fan really predict Notts to win the league. I put you second, but I didn't put Wrexham first, so that's sort of, I don't know, it's not even Chesterfield, so I think you'll have to guess that yourself who I predicted top. But yeah, Colin, I appreciate you coming on tonight.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Torquay United are an interesting club heading into the 22-23 campaign, so we're going to have a look into them and identify some of the signings they've made. So I'm joined by Tom from Torquay Talk. Tom, firstly, how do you fare heading into next season?
Oh, it's a lot of change over the summer. A lot of our better players have moved on into the EFL. Recruitment has been, in my opinion, I think our recruitment's been good. We've signed a lot of good National League quality players, not so much from the top teams, but from sort of the bottom ends. We signed Ryan Hansen from Dover, who was their captain last season, and I remember that Dover fans were quite upset that he was leaving for us. We've signed a lot of good sort of lower end players from teams in the National League. It's an interesting one because I'm not quite sure myself how it's all going to go until the season kicks off. There's a lot of potential in the squad, but no one really knows in Torquay ranks how it's going to go until we kick the ball on Saturday. Becoming
a regular occurrence, isn't it? This sort of like rebuild every single season. Like you look at the playoff campaign, and unfortunately, I think I've mentioned this every time you've come on now, but losing like you did, and then heading into next season, it was a big transition, as you'd probably expect. And I personally thought heading into this summer, can keep the majority of the squad together, including lots of Lemonhay Evans, Lewis, who could potentially stay, and then add to that with greater depth, which I expected, and having someone like Gary Johnson in charge. I personally thought it'd be a successful summer, and I don't know what Torquay fans as a whole think. I know you always want to look on the positive, don't you, heading into a new season, but to have such a drastic rebuild with players that have, to be honest, in my opinion, little experience at this level, and they're quite young. And obviously, like you've mentioned, they have played at this level before, but they are quite youthful. And is that going to be a positive or negative? It's quite hard to tell. Corey Andrews, 9 goals. Was on loan at Aldershot last season, then went to Colchester. What's your opinions on him?
Oh, you have to forgive me that I've not actually seen any of the pre-season games, so I'm only going on what my mates have reported. The reports on him have been good. Maybe not so much match fit at the moment, but there is a promising player in there once Corey gets his fitness up to standards. Dom and Chris, 2 members of Talkie Talk, have had Brett McGavin we brought in from Ipswich, has stood out in all of the friendlies. Again, a lot of our players are young, and it's an interesting one for us because Gary is good at shaping young players and getting them the match experience. And unfortunately, last summer we've suffered from those young players under Gary have moved on to better things in the EFL, and fair play to them, they deserve the move up the ladder. And in my opinion, I think this season's going to be a bit of a rebuild in itself, get the players to gel, maybe for the following season where maybe we can push on and hopefully get ourselves back into the EFL. But we'll wait and see, mate. It's tough for me to say until I've seen them in the flesh.
Yeah. But, it's an unpredictable one, isn't it, from Torquay's perspective, when you look at the players that they've brought in. 11th place finish last season. To be honest, when you look at Torquay and you look at them pushing on from the previous campaign before that, I don't think that was probably what Torquay fans were hoping for, although I think a lot of people could see it coming after the sort of drastic rebuild like I've mentioned. This season then, I think you sort of want to progress back into those playoff places now, which is something that Torquay are definitely aiming for and eventually wanting to get back to the Football League like many clubs. But a lot of sides are predicting you lower down, as low as I've predicted you 14th. And I look at the players that you brought in, and like I've mentioned, they're unexperienced, they're young. What do you think Torquay need to do next season to have a successful season and aim for the playoffs?
We need to have a good start. Last season, we had a pretty poor start. And then once we sort of hit the Christmas period, we started to find our feet and we had a really good run. But by then, it was too late for us to really consider ourselves promotion material or to get ourselves into the playoffs. And we've got a tough start. We've got Oldham at home. Then we've got you guys at the show the week after. We need to be more consistent, take our chances better, and we need to have a bit better luck on the injury front, because the last few seasons we've had some pretty horrific luck when it came to injuries. Last season was a little bit better than the previous seasons, but we still had quite a few injuries which to our better players. Ideally, I'd like to think that we're good enough for the playoffs. Gary Johnson won't have anything less than promotion on his mind. Yeah. So I'd like to think last season, we don't tend to finish mid-table often, so we're either up there or we're not. But under Gary, you'd like to think that we could be pushing for the playoffs. I think we could be pushing for a playoff spot, but you just don't know. This season, we could be fighting for playoffs, or we could be, like you said, 14th, 15th. It's how quickly our new players can gel and how quickly we can kick off the National League campaign. That'll be the vital thing for me.
What do you think your identity will be next season, heading into the next campaign? For example, formation, playing style, etc.
It's difficult. I'd like to think we'll be a passing team. I think when we play it on the floor, we're one of the best teams in the division to do that. I don't know if we're going to look at possibly 4 at the back or 3 at the back. Gary's had the tendency to play sort of 3-5-2 and change it up a little bit. We don't really have much in the way of wingers this season, so it'll be interesting how that goes. Honestly, the honest answer, mate, is I'm not 100% sure how it's going to go this season. I think it's just trying to find that formation that's going to click and then just stick with that throughout the season, because I think last season we were trying to move around with some injuries, and that sort of affected how we were playing. But yeah, wait and see how it goes this season, I think.
I think Torquay fans, they always have that sort of saying, don't they? And many clubs do. In Gary, we trust, because of what Gary Johnson's done at the past at Yeovil and how successful that was. And, you know, the sort of underdog story that I think he probably likes that statement when he comes into a club. And, you know, his aims, and he's been at Torquay for a number of seasons now, is to take Torquay back to the Football League. And I think you have to trust in him personally, and hopefully he'll deliver this season. So, yeah, finally then, what would a score prediction be for you? Not score prediction, apologies. A prediction be for you next season?
I'm going to go with 6th. I'm going to be optimistic and say we're going to get into the playoffs. I think we're going to gel a lot quicker. Fingers crossed we do. I think we'll be, like last season, in a way, I think we'll be competitive against the so-called bigger clubs, your Wrexhams, your Notts Counties, yourselves, etc. It's whether we can get the victories over the clubs in the lower half of the table, because that's another reason we struggled last season for the playoffs, was because we couldn't beat those smaller clubs. Yeah. Sorry, not smaller clubs, but the clubs lower down.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
no disrespect to those clubs, but so, and again, that in Gary, we trust that Gary's got full backing from the support at Torquay. I keep saying without Gary, I don't think we would be in the National League system myself. I think we would have drifted away, and who knows, we might have had to have started again. It was that bad when Gary came in and he changed the morale across. So with Gary Johnson, you've always got a chance of promotion. Been there, done that. He's won the league, and you get the feeling with him as well that this might be his last hurrah if he can get us back into the Football League. So, he's got my support. He's got everyone's support at the club. And fingers crossed this is the season that we can get ourselves back into the EFL. It'll be difficult, and there's a lot of bigger clubs with a lot of money to spend this season. But as always, we'll give it our best and hopefully make Playmore a fortress like we did at the second half of last season.
Yeah, I know I've mentioned this about 3 times now, but finally, what is your score prediction for Alden?
I'm going to go 1-1. It's a very tough fixture to start. Their first game in the National League, new owners, so they're going to have that high. Whether, we've seen that video of their new owners and how they think they're going to take the National League by storm and they're going to go up first time. They might do, but it's a very difficult division and you need to respect the National League as a whole if you're going to be successful. So, no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad it's a home game. They'll bring a good support down. Should be a really good atmosphere. And I just can't wait for the season to start now. Let's get it going.
Tom, I appreciate you coming on.
Luke, pleasure anytime.
So Dorking Wanderers are making their debut in the National League on Saturday, facing Chesterfield for the opening league match at Dorking Wanderers. I'm joined by Dan Stobbart, who works with the media team at Dorking. Dan, firstly, you're looking forward to the game against Chesterfield on Saturday.
Hi, Luke. Yeah, no, thanks for having me back on the podcast. It's come around quickly, hasn't it, this Saturday? Yeah, we're very much looking forward to it. Expecting a really decent crowd. I know Chesterfield's allocation is going to be a big one for coming down to Meadowbank on Saturday. So, yeah, no, it's going to be fantastic. It was always going to be a momentous occasion. Obviously, the club's first fixture in the National League Premier, but to get such an established side like Chesterfield down with the fan base they've got, it's going to make for a real occasion. Yeah, so I can't wait now. It's just a few days away, yeah.
It certainly is when you look at Dorking and you look at where they've come from. Would you say this is probably the biggest side based off fan base, history, established league side that Dorking have ever played in the history?
Yeah, it'd be right up there because I think really, off the top of my head, I know we've had certainly in league terms, absolutely it is. Yes, the visit of Chesterfield on Saturday will be. We have played a few National League Premier sides in the FA Trophy in the last few seasons and been away to Stockport County. It was a really memorable occasion. The Wanderers got off a 4-0 victory that night. It was a replay up at their place. So that was certainly at that stage, that was the biggest team we'd faced. And then last season faced Southend United in the FA Trophy as well. So, yeah, but no, in league terms, it will be. And yeah, you couldn't have picked with Chesterford on the opening day and Oldham the following week away from home and on BT Sport. You couldn't have picked two big ones.
Sorry. I just want to ask a little bit about that Oldham game, in fact, before we do move on to transfer business and all that sort of things. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen Oldham's new ownership, with the new owners coming in. Did you see the opening interview he did and how I think he disrespected Dorking?
Well, I mean, Mark, the manager and the owner, he sort of responded in his weekly update that he does every Friday for the club, and I think he absolutely got it right. It's it's to be expected. I think through the course of the season, we're going to get plenty of that. I think with Wanderers having had such a fast ascent through the leagues and coming into National League for the first time, there's going to be plenty of that, I'm sure, through the course of the season. But Mark responded in the right way. I think we take it as it is, and that's the team talk sorted. I think from the Wanderers players' perspective.
There's a lot worse clubs that people take the mick out than Dorking. I've seen on like National League forums and things like that. Everyone seems to look at Dorking and think, oh yeah, it's Dorking. They're new to the National League. It'll be interesting to see how they do. I don't think anyone particularly wants you to get relegated. Well, you look at other sides. I'm not going to mention any names, but obviously some of the smaller sides, like yourselves in the division, possibly they even get lower attendances than Dorking to say where they've come from. You look at them, you think of how they're running, how it's just all about the financial side, where Dorking, there's a true sort of story behind it, a concept behind Dorking and basically where they've come from. And the Bunch of Amateurs series definitely supports that, which makes a lot of people, have a bit of a connection with Dorking Wanderers. So, yeah, I think Dorking next season are a side that, particularly for me, I want to see do well. And I think that's for a lot of sides as well. I don't think people will be particularly taking the mick out of you on a regular basis like we've seen with other sides in the division. But, yeah, a bit on your transfer activity then so far. Obviously, I've had you on previously at the start of the window, but it was very early days there. It was a bit more on your promotion and everything about that. What's happened over the past couple of weeks? Obviously, we've got Ryan Seeger coming in, a good signing for you from Hungerford. 27 goals. Adam Mecky's come from Ebbsfleet, another good signing. An established National League player that he's played in the past and even in the Football League too. I also were doing a bit of research on Alfie Rusherford, who's obviously with you last season. And I looked at him, and I looked at him when he was at Haverton and Waterlooville. He got 15 goals in this division, so I'm sure that sort of complements and gives you a bit of more aspiration heading into next season, that you're not going to be particularly struggling to score goals when you've got a striker that can prove that he's done it in the past in the National League. Does the transfer business as a whole for you give you a bit more positivity heading into next season?
Yeah, certainly. I spoke to you obviously a few weeks back, and actually there's not been any further activity. And I think Mark, even at that point, was satisfied with the business he's done. And as far as he was concerned, that would be it. We had 4 players leave the club at the end of last season. We've had the 4 come in, the 3 that you mentioned there. We also had Joe Babette's come in from Aldershot, but he's a younger player. He's been loaned out to Bognor Regis. But for those 3 you mentioned, obviously Jack Jebb, Ryan Seeger and Adam Mecky, all come in and seen their qualities already in pre-season. I mean, Ryan Seeger's already scored 4 goals through the course of pre-season, so he's already found his shooting boots, and Rutherford's got a few as well up top with him. But yeah, no, I think that will be it, as indicated by Mark, and as true to how the club's always been, really very economic in how they do the business over the transfer windows. Very much looking to replace like for like, and when it comes to comings and goings, and retain that core group is the most important thing, and hence staying part time to ensure that we keep a lot of those core players who did such a good job last season, the likes of Rutherford, and obviously, looking a bit further back through the team, the like key players from last season like Josh Taylor and Matt Briggs, etc. So it's the business was done early, so I've not got any sort of new updates saying that or anything kind of further to add. I think the club is satisfied with what they've done, and that looks like the way they'll go going into the season. That looks set as we go into the opening weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be as I've mentioned, it's very exciting times. Odolaka, one sort of loss, significant loss, I think we can all agree, for Dorking, him going to Chesterfield. However, like you've mentioned, you've replaced with good players like Adam Meke, who's coming to the side. For you then, Dorking, heading into Saturday's game and, of course, over the course of the season, what do you think your identity will be?
Well, Mark, I think, and the management team, they'll be very much true to the principles that the style of players that's carried them as so far in recent seasons. The 3-5-2 formation they go with, where you've got the playing out from the back, and it's all about possession, controlling games of possession, looking to get balls into the wide players, and they won't look to compromise on that. I mean, through the course of pre-season, Mark's acknowledged and reflecting some of his team selections, that we're going to have to look at obviously four at the back and utilising that in when it comes to match play and in certain situations in games, and that's obviously heightened, going up to this level. But no, in the main, it'll be very much about sticking with those principles, as I say, that 3-5-2 and sort of playing out from the back and then looking to play football in that way. Yeah, so they'll certainly look to persist with that, but of course be mindful of some of the tests and the challenges we're up against as well, and be more, look to be more versatile and flexible through the course of this campaign. Yeah.
What are your expectations then for Dorking heading into next season? Would it be to stabilise in this division, hope for like a mid-table finish, or would it just be to survive in the division, potentially just to enjoy it and just see what happens at the end of the campaign with very little expectations?
Yeah, and I think the fact that expectation, here's the first season in the division, so naturally, like any new team in that situation, of course, survival is absolutely paramount. That's what you want to be doing. But Mark and the management team will be very much aiming to be competitive, look to mix it up with the bigger teams in the league, and then finish as high as possible. And I mean, I personally think there's no reason why they can't strive for a competitive mid-table finish, and certainly in tandem with a cup run. I know last year they were agonisingly close to getting to the first round proper of the FA Cup. That's been a long-term ambition for the club.
You only have to win the 2 games now, so you're in a lot better position to try qualify for that. No,
exactly. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, a competitive, mid-table finish in tandem with a cup run in the FA Cup and even obviously the FA Trophy as well, of course. I think that would really symbolise a fantastic season, and that expectation naturally, being slightly reduced with the fact that it is the first season at this level. But of course, yeah, being a newly promoted side, you've got to be realistic and you've got to reconcile those expectations with, looking to survive and consolidate at the same time. But yeah, Mark and the team will very much be looking to, they certainly won't be looking to, accepting of finishing 20th. It'll be very much about kicking on and looking to finish as high as possible.
Yeah, there's always that view, isn't there, on sides that get promoted, no matter how well they've done. When they first come to the National League, everyone expects them to get relegated. Where I think we've seen a few fans that have all been quite optimistic. Not optimistic, because I think I look at the squad on paper and based off the experience in the past in the National League with the players that you've brought, and I expect Dorking to survive. That's why I've placed you in 19th place, which I feel suitable for you. I'm sure there'll be some Dorking fans wanting to do better next season, but I think Dorking this season, if they stabilise in this division, they can try push on in the upcoming seasons. And yeah, I'd love to see Dorking be a regular competitive team in this division for the upcoming seasons too. I think a good example of a side to follow, although they're not very likeable by other sides, is the likes of Bournemouth. They're a side that come out of nowhere, and you look at them stabilising in this division. Eastleigh, another side, you look at the attendances they're getting. They don't particularly have too much history at this division, but they've stabilised, and you look at them now, although they didn't have too good of a season last campaign, they wanted to potentially try aim for the playoffs, and that's something that I'm sure Dorking will do in the upcoming seasons too. Dan, I really appreciate you coming on, and good luck to Dorking heading into this season's campaign.
Thank you, Luke. Much.
So I'm joined by Chris Phillips, a Southend journalist, to talk a bit about Southend. Chris, firstly then, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. I'm quite looking forward to the season actually starting for real now. I guess like a lot of football fans, you miss it during the summer, don't you? And then pre-season starts, and the first one or two you look forward to because you haven't seen football in so long. But after a while, pre-season's not quite the same, is it? The matches don't have the same intensity. There's a lot of substitutions and trialists, and it's not quite the same adrenaline rush, is it? When you get a goal, it doesn't mean quite so much, or certainly when you get a victory. So now that that's all out of the way, Southend have got Boreham Wood on Saturday, so it's a good one to start off with, a good game. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, I'm good, thank you, and I hope you are too.
Yeah, certainly. I'm a lot more signed for Halifax time of recording. I think we are recording, on the Monday we're recording. This will obviously be coming out on the Thursday. So yeah, Chris, I just want to talk a little bit about Southend's transfer business so far. Obviously, you've sort of seen quite a big sort of, I think, gap from the previous campaign. You looked at Southend last season and you saw the business that they made when they first came down to the National League. It took a long time for them to adjust. Do you think you're more equipped now heading into the 22-23 campaign, Southend?
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to think so. I think if you look at the transfer business that was the last summer, it was quite mixed. The initial reaction is to say that it was quite poor, but I think in a way you do have to realise that Steve Arnold got Player of the Year. He came in last summer. He was a very good sign-in, and Sam Dolby came in, and obviously he's moved on today. He's joined Wrexham, so he's moved on. But there were one or two that were perhaps sort of ageing players that didn't quite fit into what Southend should have been looking for, really. But it's been a learning process, and Kevin May has come in. He came in for the second half of last season, and there's definitely been a huge upturn in Southend's fortunes. There's a lot of positivity around the place, or a lot more positivity than there was previously, and I think the signings have helped towards that. Southend signed quite a few last January with the likes of Noor Hussein and Harry Cardwell and people like that coming in that did well, albeit Harry's now unfortunately injured. And this summer it's been the same. There's a lot of young, hungry players that are on the way up, and they're keen to do well, and they're players that know the level, and they've done well at this level. And I think that's important. I think maybe last summer Southend obviously hadn't been at this level before, and it was all a little bit new, and perhaps they didn't quite know what kind of players were going to work and which ones weren't. And the management's changed since then, so it's not fair to register those criticisms at the people that are in place at the club now. But I do think overall lessons have been learned, and you'd have to say that the recruitment so far on paper seems to be a lot more positive. But of course, you never know how these things are going to materialise. But I think Southend are probably a striker short, and they still need another defender. But the management are obviously aware of that as well. And yeah, I think as a Southend supporter, you're definitely going into this season 10 times more positive than we were going into last season.
Yeah, we certainly saw a boost when Kevin Mayer came in last season during October time, and that seemed to reflect positively on the players, with Southend's form increasing during the second half of the campaign. Heading into this season, you've made a few more additions. That includes the likes of Dan Mooney, Jay Card, who signed today. I think that's part of the Dolby deal, to be honest, who's obviously gone to Wrexham. And I think a bit of a swap deal, I believe. Obviously, he's still on loan, Jay Card, from Wrexham, but I think you will end up signing him by the end of the campaign. Do you think overall, with the business that you've made, the likes of Jay Card, Dan Mooney, you can compete and potentially aim for the playoffs, if not higher?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Dan Mooney in particular, I know you can't get too excited by pre-season and what happens, and it's a different intensity of matches, but he's been fantastic, especially early on in pre-season. He scored some fantastic goals and was quite often the best player on the pitch on a number of occasions during pre-season. So him in particular is a very exciting acquisition from what we've seen so far. And yeah, why not? I think if you looked at the form during the sort of second half of last season, then Southend would be right up there. I think they were sort of third or fourth at one point in the form guide for quite a considerable amount of time. There was a little blip towards the end of last season, and then things took a little bit of an upturn. So I definitely like to think that Southend have all the capabilities to be able to challenge for a playoff place this season. I don't think that's being out of the net. I think, Southend do have that and within their capabilities. That's not sort of pie in the sky thinking. I think top 10 is a definite, but there's some tough teams in this league, and very good teams. So there's quite a lot of teams that are going to be having those similar aspirations going into the year ahead. But to answer your question, yeah, I do think Southend can push for the playoffs this season. They need to get a few more goals. I think that would be the issue that we've all got at the moment. We may be worrying where or not the goals are going to come from, perhaps. But Jake Hyde's come in. Hopefully he can stay fit and he can add extra quality and capabilities. I'm sure Southend are looking to bring in another striker as well. And with the creativity of Mooney and Bridge and Noor Hassin and Wes Fongu that's come in as well, I do think Southend on paper seemingly have the capabilities to impress going forward. And yeah, I do think Southend have got the potential to push for the playoffs. There's just always, following Southend's not like any other club. There's always the saying that me and my friends have got that comes up quite often, which is only at Southend. And they do seem to have this thing that you do have to worry that at some point you've got that nagging thought in the back of your head that something's going to go wrong off the pitch and it's going to start, a bit of negativity is going to seep in. So if the main focus is what's happening on the pitch this season and there's no sort of worries with finances or embargoes or late payment of wages or anything like that, then Southend have got the capabilities to push for the playoffs and promotion. But there is always that nagging thought at the back of your head as a Southend fan that you do worry that something might go wrong at some point. But sitting here as we are today, you've got to feel confident. And if you can't be excited before the season's even started, then you're never going to be.
Yeah, you mentioned the addition of Jake Hyde. I'd just like to say a little bit on him personally from my point of view when he was at Halifax. He was a very good striker. You could sort of tell if he wasn't injured and he wasn't injury prone. When he's fit, he's fully fit. He can be a prolific striker. And he had periods during the COVID season. I think everyone likes to explain it as when he was with the club. He had a lot of injury problems. However, when he was on it, and we sort of saw a glimpse within the season, he was prolific. You know, he scored 12 goals in that campaign, making 22 starts for the club, including 27 appearances altogether. You know, you look at his previous time at work in another southern club down near Southend, I believe. You sort of saw him being prolific then. 18 goals he got for him. So I think if Southend keep him, fully fit, he's strong, he's doing well next season, I think he could be the missing piece of Southend's jigsaw based off goals. And I think with another addition heading into next season, I think Southend will be very strong and a very good team. Yeah, another thing though on Southend, you look at the business they've done. They haven't exactly broken the market, but seems to be quite intelligent business, I have to say, when I look at the signings they've made. The likes of Harry Taylor coming in to the squad too. What are your thoughts then on the likes of Harry Taylor, Calvin Miller from Eastleigh coming to the side?
Yeah, so I think with Harry, they're players that would have known Darren Curry. Obviously, he was Barnet manager, and he had to spell out the game, and then came to sort of Southend. He's now assistant head coach, so he's got good contacts within the game. So Harry and Wes Fongu that have both come in look to be good signings on what we've seen so far. I think Harry's predominantly a midfielder, but we've already seen in pre-season that he has the capabilities to play elsewhere if needed. For instance, Southend actually started the season with the shortest of options down the right-hand side. So Jason Dimitri got sent off in the last game of last season. So he's going to have a 3-match suspension. And another summer signing, Gus Scott-Morris, he's had a hamstring issue and he's been missing since the first pre-season. So he's missed sort of 6-7 pre-season games. So I'd be very surprised if he's going to be risked at the start of the season. So someone like Harry comes into his own there. He's played at right wing back and played there against Ipswich and again at the weekend against Crystal Palace. So he's shown that he can perform in a variety of roles. And players like that are important at this level because most of the clubs, apart from one maybe, which we both know who I'm talking about, can't afford to carry a huge squad. So you have to have those players that are able to fill in and do a job for the team elsewhere. And it's the same with Cav. He's come in and a holding midfield player. And I think players like him, they're not necessarily the ones that are going to get the headlines every week, but they're important players that you need in a successful team. They sort of do the dirty work, so to speak, and they keep things ticking over. And he's looked good in pre-season as well. He scored against Colchester, which is always good from a Southend point of view, even if it was a bit of a mistake from the goalkeeper. So a lot of the signs have been promising so far. And I think in the midfield area, Southend are very strong. That I don't envy Kevin Mayer in selecting that side when everyone's fully fit, because he has got so many options in there now. With Noor Hassim was a class act when he came in last season. You've got Harry and Cav and Wes, and you also had one of the youth team players who's pushed forward called Ollie Coker, who's been fantastic for Southend in pre-season. And you have to feel a bit sorry for him because he's probably been pushed down the pecking order a little bit by the recent acquisitions. But I think that's where Southend are strongest right now in terms of strength of depth, definitely in the centre of the park. So I agree. And having someone like John Steele at the club is brilliant as well. I don't think anybody knows non-league as well as he does, perhaps, especially at the National League. And he's had success with one or two clubs already in the past at this level. And his experience will be invaluable for Kevin Mayer, not just in the transfer market and the scouts that he brings to the club, but also as a bit of a sounding board. It's Kev's first job as a manager, or head coach as he's called at Southend, and I think having John Steele as someone that he can confide in and talk to whenever he needs is huge for Kevin, and it will be invaluable during the months, during the good times, and perhaps even more so during the bad times. So yeah, I think the recruitment so far has been positive for Southend, and I hope that can continue.
Yeah, what do you think Southend's identity will be next season?
It's a good question, that, because Southend were lacking an identity for so long that it was been demoralising for so long following Southend. We had the back-to-back relegations, and then we started off last season really badly, and it had just been horrific for so long. It became toxic, and going to games was no longer enjoyable. You'd go to games purely because, I mean, I guess it is my job, but obviously I would go anyway because Southend's my team. But you kind of go because that's what you did rather than that's what you wanted to do. And it was tough viewing, and there was no identity, and you didn't know what Southend were ever going to be. You didn't know what formation they were going to play. You didn't know who was going to play where, and it changed so often that there was no consistency to it whatsoever. I think since Kevin's come in, there's been the wing-back formation, or there's been a 3-4-3. There have been the two sort of different formations that they've switched between. So I fully expect that to be the case moving forward. If you're looking at the wing-backs, I'm not too sure perhaps that suits Dan Mooney. I don't know where or not he would fit into that, and he's certainly got to be in Southend's best 11 at this stage. I guess he could play as a floating number 10 or whatnot, but I think he's better out wide. So I think that is perhaps what Southend will do more this season. So that'll be the identity. They'll be trying to get on the front foot. They want to be pressing like many sides do now, leading from the front and sort of passing the ball around. The football was enjoyable. They were good players brought to the club that could sort of pass it around, and there's going to be mistakes. It's National League football, and you have to be realistic that we're not going to be playing like Manchester City, and things are going to go wrong. But at Southend, if you give your all, then people won't ask for any more, especially after what we've seen in the past few years. And that was the best thing. There was an identity back. There was a togetherness. Kevin's played 450 odd games for this football club as a player, so he's a real sort of club legend, and he's come back to the club, and there's that togetherness again between the supporters and the team that had been missing for so long, and that's something that he's managed to integrate again, which has been great to see. The support has been unbelievable, especially when you consider just how bad it was for so long.
Was it 8,000 you had against? Was it Barnet last season? You had about
8,000. The crowds were just honestly. And it's one thing like just looking at the crowd and think, oh yeah, that's good. But when you see that there can't be too many clubs that have had the back-to-back relegations, and it was so bad. I mean, we were losing like 7-1 at home, and it was horrific. Like, it was so bad. Like, you can't even put it into words.
I think probably an embarrassment, wouldn't it be, being a Southend fan? Yeah, finally then, just talking a bit about your prediction as a Southend fan, where you feel a suitable placement would be for you. What do you think a suitable placement would be for you next season?
I always believe that you have to aim higher, because I don't think you should ever go into a season and be happy with mid-table. I think your first thing is to always do better than you did last time. So Southend were 13th last season, and I'd like to think they'll be higher than that this year. Top 10 is definitely achievable, and if you can get top 10, then I think you can definitely get into the playoffs, and I do think that's possible for Southend. We've got a very tough start to the season. Our first few fixtures are sort of boring.
Could be beneficial, that though.
Yeah, it can go either way, and I guess you're never too sure. Just because the side was good last year doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good again this year. But it's a tough start. But I do think Southend have got the capabilities to be pushing for the playoffs, and I think that's realistic. And I'd like to think that they'll be challenging for that this year, and there can be a bit of positivity for a sustained period, because we haven't had that for a while. So it's a tough league. A lot of good sides will be trying to get promotion, but Southend should be among them.
Chris, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for asking me.
So FC Halifax Town have been very busy in the transfer window so far, so we're going to talk a little bit about them. As you can see, I'm not joined by a Halifax Town fan. I'm joined by a Stockport County fan. There's quite a big reason for that, isn't there? I'm joined by Russ Johnson from the Scarf Bagara War podcast. Firstly, congratulations on promotion to the Football League.
Thank you very much.
So we first start then with Sam Minihan. He's signed for Halifax this afternoon. Could you give the fans a little bit news on him?
Yes, Sam, and he's an absolute legend at the club. We're really disappointed he's left, but I guess from his point of view, and there's an interview today as well that you should probably watch. I mean, I'll admit I was welling up at the end. So yeah, big character, big legend. 208 appearances. He won 2 league titles with us. When we started this podcast in January 2015, he was one of the first. Well, he was the first player to come on. And he was playing semi-professional for us then. And we said to him, "Would you go full time with us?" And he just went yes in a heartbeat. He didn't even blink when he said it. Massive fans' favourite, absolute belting player. You've got yourself an absolute quality player and a quality lad. I've met him on a few times. He's a belting lad. Yeah, we're all sort of gutted he's gone, but we can see the reasons why. He was down the pecking order. He wasn't guaranteed to get minutes. And that's what he wants, and he'll give you what I'll say about him is he'll give you absolute minimum 7 out of 10 every match.
Oh, I'll take that every game. Yeah. Do you think that when you think of him and Stockport moving to the Football League, do you think he's actually a player good enough to play in the Football League? Do you think it's just that Stockport, we've seen what they're doing this season. They are really going for it. They're not just wanting to be in the Football League, are they? They're now wanting to progress into League One and then go even further than that in the near future. Do you think the reason that he's left because with the big investment, do you think if you got promoted and your squad wasn't as big and you didn't have the same funds to bring in new players, he might stay with the club?
I think that's a fair comment. Yeah. I think we just with what we've done, with strengthened on top of already a very good squad, he does find himself a bit further down that pecking order. If we'd have gone up, say if he was at Grimsby and he'd have got up, he'd probably have got a shot at League Two. With any other club, maybe not Wrexham, but with any other club, I think he'd have got a shot. We were all thinking he would get a shot with us. I spoke to Challoner in an interview just after the season ended. I said, "Look, the 4 lads that were with us, you've got 2 of them. The four lads that are legends for us, you've got 2 of them. We've kept 2. Have they got a chance in League Two?" And he said, yeah. He said, but they've got to take the chance and prove to me that they can do that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think we've just built on what was already a very good squad, and I think he's just unlucky. The good thing with Sam and Keno as well, and I'm sure we'll come on to Keno in a second. Keno has 100% been given a role in the academy, so he'll be coming back, and I think he lives in the area now. And judging by the interview that Sam gave us, he'll be coming back and coaching in the future as well. So the Stockport County life hasn't ended. We're just on loan to Halifax.
Yeah, so, sort of. Yeah, until they retire, quite an extended.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'd take that. Yeah, they are impressive signings, and they seem quite committed as well. Where we've seen with Halifax in the past, is you get a good player, for example, Billy Waters at Naumar, they end up leaving and going to progress in the future, like we've seen with them going into the Football League, where it feels like now Sam Minihan, Jordan Keane, etc. These sort of players seem to be stable at National League level. They're not, I won't say not inspiring to be in the Football League, but they won't be like opportunities, I would say, for them to get into the Football League without it being with Halifax now. So it proves that they're quite committed. So yeah, just a little bit more on Jordan Keane. In fact, he seems to be quite a legend, doesn't he, at Stockport County? I know you did an interview with him a couple of weeks ago. struggled for game time last season. Scored one of the best goals, I think. Was it the winner in, I think, goal of the season, wasn't it, at National League level last season? What's your thoughts on him as a player?
Yeah, really good. Again, we're a bit gutted he left, but we can see the reasons why. Really good utility player. Again, they've been at County so long because they give their all and they get the club. And again, Jordan Keane is one that will give you 7 out of 10 minimum. That is the absolute minimum, by the way. And Keno as well. He came into our team last season, having not played much, but just slotted in dead quick. And, you know, he can play in so many positions. He can play right back, centre half. He can play centre mid, CDM. And yeah, you're right. He scored the goal of we all voted for it. Goal of the season against Needham Market in the FA Trophy, which was, if that was in the Premier League or a higher league, it'd be on Soccer AM. You know, all those, you're getting reruns on things like that. So again, you just got a really committed player. I think you're right in saying, I think you're right and wrong in what you were saying about like the inspiration bit and the staying around for a bit. I think they will stay around for you because the local lads, I can't see them wanting to move unless there was a really good opportunity in the Football League. I think they can play Football League football. It's just whether the move is right for them because they are local. I know they're both settled in the area. Jordan Keane's just moved from the area because he's from Nottingham, I think, or that way. His wife works at the club, so I don't think they're going anywhere soon. So Halifax is just a really, really good opportunity for them to get minutes, play at a good club in front of a good crowd. And our fan base is, we're starting to think now, well, we'll be looking out for Halifax in the National League.
Help us increase our attendances, hopefully. Yeah, if a couple of you ended up coming down. But yeah, moving on just to a few more of the signings, because they are a lot, I have to say, of players. You could, I think, half of 11, I think about 5 or 6 we've signed from Stockport. Stott as well. Is it Stott? I think we've signed Jamie Stott, centre half. Obviously, it's quite hard to say because I don't know what Stockport fans think of him as a centre half. He's still quite young, I believe, as well as a centre half. What's your opinions on him?
Again, we rated him. He was good. A good young centre half. Came from Alden when we had him on loan. We had him on loan for an initial spell in the National League North. We were desperate to get him back. We did. We got him back on a permanent. And then as we got him back on a permanent, that's when the investment started and we started to get arguably better players in terms of current ability into the squad. So he fell down the pecking order a bit. But there was always a feeling with him that potential was massive. And I think it still is. So he needs first team football at that level. And if he plays left centre back, if you're playing a 4 or a left-sided centre half, again, if you're playing 5 at the back, then those are his positions. He did play out on the left as a left back for us. Not many times, but on one particular occasion, he was at fault for letting crosses come in. But, what is he, 23 or something? You can't argue with that. Yeah, really good. Really, again, highly thought of at County. And again, you've got a good player.
Yeah, it seems to be quite a regular trend with the players that we brought in from Stockport. I'm hoping that it will be as successful as next season with this sort of like Stockport, Lancashire sort of players that we've brought in. We've brought in players from, I think, Burnley, a youngster from Burnley as well. We've brought in too. A bit on Millen. Is it? I can't even pronounce it. Ali. He is. Yeah. He's Irish. He was at Stockport. Had a lot of loan spells. Like you mentioned before we started recording, played a lot of time in like the Cheshire Cup and competitions like that aren't as significant as league football. From what you've seen, what are your opinions of him as a player?
Yeah, he's good. Nippy, quick, and agile forward. That in the Cheshire Cup and the games that I saw him in the friendlies, he seemed to score goals from out of nothing. Very kind of explosive at a national league.
Again, was it at Stockport where it was like down the wing and he somehow he beat like a man? Just yeah. That's it. That was in the Cheshire Cup.
He got a decent run out. We again thought highly of him. Thought he had a lot, bags of potential. We were wondering when he was going to break through. But again, with the investment, it's difficult. Unless they're really, really good. Like we got a lad called Cody Johnson. He's breaking through. Then the chances are limited. So low center of gravity, really good. We nicknamed him the Font as in FONT, because Melenic Ali sounds like a font you'd use in Microsoft Word. But yeah, again, really, you've got yourself a really. I'm not just saying this because he's from County and I'm on your show. You really have. You've got some really good players here, especially with Keane and Minion. Especially with them two. You got Warby as well, haven't you? You know.
Yeah, we've got Harvey Gilmore.
You got Gilmore.
Yeah, Harvey Gilmore. What's your impressions of him?
You see, I thought he was unlucky at County. In the first season, after we got just before the investment, he came on and he came with quite a lot of, quite highly thought of when he came. He came on for us. He started a game, but then got sent off really unluckily. But before that, he was playing really well and almost scored. And I thought when he comes back from the suspension that he was unlucky to get, I thought he'd have a run out of the team. But I think that coincided with a bit of investment. Other players came in. So again, I thought he was unlucky. But if we're being honest with ourselves, he probably wouldn't make the grade now. And he probably wouldn't have made the grade last season. Yeah. And I think he just got a bit unlucky with his timing.
Yeah, he struggled last. I don't know if he struggled, but he was quite just a safe player at Halifax. Never did anything out of the ordinary. We're just midfielder making numbers up. I think that's maybe not fair on him, but I think this season he has a lot to prove for Halifax. Hopefully, he can probably improve from last season. It seems that he has done in pre-season friendly. But yeah, finally, Festus Arthur then we brought in from Hull City. He left Stockport. I have to say, he looks scary. He's a big centre half, isn't he? We've actually paid a fee. I think we've paid a fee for him, I believe. So that's quite impressive from our point of view. What were your impressions of him when he was at Stockport?
So we didn't really get to see him that much. He was a product of Jim Gannon, or sort of a selection from Jim Gannon. When he did play, I mean, obviously a massive unit of a centre half. So. I can see your back line looking pretty good already, to be honest.
Yeah, there's still Deborah from, you might not know who he is, but Deborah from last season, strong for us. Yeah,
so I think you're going to be really good defensively. So he was big unit, big lad, good with his feet, pretty mobile. Again, we thought, like some of the other players that have gone to Premier League teams from us, we thought, we'd like to keep hold of him, but we couldn't at the time. So yeah, you've got a good player. He's tall. We've seen him. He's built pretty big, isn't he? So, and again, still young. So, Hull City don't take players on, frivolously. I know the chief scout at Hull City. He's a Stockport County fan. Spoke to him about it, and they were like, "Yeah, we've been they were looking at him for a long time when he was at County." So. I think the potential's there. He probably just needs to play games.
Yeah, is there anyone else at Stockport then that we could potentially pinch from the crowd? Elliot Newby, I liked him when he was at Halifax. I think he couldn't actually really get in the team, to be honest, at that time during the season. I think there were a lot of players like Waters slew in front of him. But I think if he came back now and he was properly signed with the club, I think he'd have a successful season. Is he for sale?
No, he's not. So we've got Macaulay Southam Hales as the right wing back. I think Newby is nailed on when he's not in other positions. Newby would be nailed on to cover for that position. Mm-hmm. So yeah, which he did do impressively last season. So hence Minion being further down the pecking order, I guess. Mm-hmm. So you can't have both. Be happy with Minion. Come on.
Yeah, I won't be happy with Quigley though. Before you suggest him, I know a lot of club Morecambe I think are after him. You want him to keep him?
Yeah. What keep him? What keep him?
Don't want him at Halifax.
Do you not like him at Halifax?
No, he were lazy up front. There's a lot more words I could say for him. Yeah, quite cocky to be honest with his interviews. Saying as soon as I get a goal, I'll go on a scoring streak, and he didn't, unfortunately. And yeah, then he went to Barrow and did well there and finds himself at Stockport. But yeah, I wouldn't want him back at Halifax. I have to say, not too fond of him.
No, we like him. We like him. He takes the mickey out of the opposition fans and things, doesn't he? So you like it when it's on your team, don't you? So yeah, and he scores goals, so we're quite happy with him.
Is there anyone else then?
I would say not. I mean, we've got some younger players that would go out on loan, but I think you've got enough from Stockport, really, haven't you?
Yeah, we've got like Manny Dessler. I'm sure you know a bit about him, but we need a small goal scorer like Billy Waters. That's what we need now. So
Yeah, and arguably you've got that with Milanic Ali. I mean, if he hits the ground running and he's given game time, I'm pretty sure he'll do quite well for you. But yeah, from our perspective, no, there's no one else. I think we're just about settled with our squad now. I think we've got 24 or 25, and there's new rules in the EFL that I've still not got my head round. I asked Challoner at an event on Sunday on stage if he was going to bring anybody else in, and he said we might do. So
if
we might see.
We'll have Challoner as well.
No, I'll stop him myself. I'll block the roads myself from him going to Halifax.
He left Hartlepool, didn't he? But yeah, it's a bit different circumstances. Couldn't see him coming back down to the National League now. I think he'll progress far with Stockport. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on short notice. If there are any Stockport fans, which is unlikely, but if there are any Stockport fans that haven't found the Scarf Bagar War podcast who are watching this, I would suggest going and following them over there. Cheers for coming on.
Cheers, mate.
So I'm joined by Matthew, Eastleigh fan, runs Spy Rights Report. We're going to be talking a bit about Eastleigh heading into next season. Matthew, firstly then, what are your thoughts so far on the window for Eastleigh?
There's players being released due to the horrific season last year, but quite a few decent, I think, arrivals. Like, for example, Brennan Camp, we beat apparently some League Two sides, bringing him in. And I think he's going to be the real kind of breakthrough player, I think. Well, not really breakthrough, but the kind of a player who's going to be on one of our star players next year. Him and Harp on the wing-back side. But losing, obviously, releasing Pritchard, obviously Sam Smart to use, and Cavan O'Malley to Southend. So it's going to be an interesting one to see how players gel and just how strong is the team we've brought together.
Yeah, I'm guessing you'll be probably wanting a better season than the previous campaign. When you look at the progression that Eastleigh have had over the last couple of seasons, last season really was quite a backward step. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I definitely agree. I think it's kind of been really, really tough, I think, since Donald leaving. And even the last couple of years with Stuart Donald, obviously with financial backing, but not quite good managers. We've had Martin Allen, Richard Hill. We struggled this couple of years, but I think under Ben Strevens, he's really made us a top half challenging side. And last year, it's just a shame, really player didn't really gel. So I think the individual quality of the players wasn't actually that bad for where we finished.
Yeah.
I think really it just players didn't really gel and just things didn't quite go right. Stress got sacked, he was loved by the player and he wasn't really loved by the players and he wasn't really replaced early enough.
Yeah, no, I actually predicted Eastleigh 20th and I'm sure it's something that you don't want to see, do you, this season. What do Eastleigh need to do to not have a season as poor as that?
Well, I just think maybe start on the front foot, really. Even though we've got, again, tough start of Wrexham away, which we had last season as well as our opening game. Obviously, we had a bye initially. So I think Wrexham, it's probably the best time to play them initially. Then we have a couple of games, really, where I believe we should be in with Wildstone, I believe. But then again, they have a tough start as well. Afterwards, they're like Dagenham, York, Southend, Barnet. We have a couple of, which I think all four of them really are teams to look out for in the upcoming season. So just starting on the front foot, starting with a decent start because we had a terrible away form last year, which drastically improved.
A lot of additions, like you've mentioned. Omar Cisse as well, coming from Leyton Orient, Oldham, being at Leyton Orient in the past. Tristan Abrahams as well had a good spell at Grimsby. Are you quite impressed with the business you've done so far?
I think compared to last year, I thought we were really the surprise package. A lot of us did put us in the surprise package of an outsider to get playoffs with the squad we had, bring on like Tom Whelan in. So I think last year, obviously, with the signings we made was a big letdown. So I think compared to last season, I'm a bit more wary on the transfer business. I know not to get carried away. But I do believe a couple of signings we've made are generally top half league players, such as like Carter. Chesterfield fans will know anything with Woking. Really impressed in the National League and in League Two, from what I've heard. Cisse, I've been told he's quite inconsistent. And that's the same with Aaron Martin as well, coming in from quite highly rated by Port Vale fans after their promotion. So that's the thing that worries me, is maybe inconsistency.
Yeah. So talking a bit about that then, What would a placement for you personally be suitable and you'd be expecting next season for Eastleigh? Would it be to try push for a playoff spot? Would it be to potentially stabilise after a poor season last season and just aim for higher mid-table? Or would it just be to secure another spot in the National League next season?
I think realistically, I think the aim's always really been to be top half, challenging for playoffs, because obviously without really the budget with it. But I think being realistically, I think being mid-table, I think is a suitable enough aim.
What formation do you reckon you'll be setting up next season? How do you think you'll be playing? Do you think you'll be trying to be, like you mentioned, on the front foot, but in actual games, particularly at Wrexham away? Will it be, defend deep and play on the counter-attack? How would you expect to be set up next season?
I think it's a tough one, just obviously the whole change in names. Bradbury, as soon as he came in, because Strevens was quite defensive. Bristow kind of carried on how Strevens played. He didn't really change much in the few games he was manager. And I think the one key thing Bradbury said when he came in is he wants to play good attacking football, get us on front foot. However, at the same time, I've seen us play with 5 at the back. This year in pre-season, we played with 4 at the back. So I think it is quite unknown. I think last year, Wrexham and Torquay fans will know that we just played away to frustrate the bigger teams. So it's interesting, really, to see what kind of outlook we'll go on. Will we go on a more of attacking, go for these wins, or, Wrexham thought very tough team, obviously the best team, probably arguably squad team in the league.
Yeah.
Whether we're just going to go play for a 0-0, play for a 1-0, it's quite interesting. But
Wrexham away, then I'll finally ask for your score prediction. It's going to be a tough game for you, one that no one really expects Eastleigh to win or even get a draw out of, especially with it being the first game of the season. What would your expectations be? Obviously, last season you were very unfortunate to lose at Wrexham. I think it was quite an arguably controversial penalty, wasn't it, that were given for them in the last minute, losing 3-2 to them. What would your expectations be in score prediction heading into your game against Wrexham?
I think it's definitely obviously going to be a tough one, but also at the same time, I think it's the best time to play Wrexham. Like we did last year. I don't think we played that. Obviously, I didn't go to Wrexham away last season, but I don't remember us being that commonly dominated by Wrexham, and I'm not really too sure about their transfer business. I haven't really looked into it. However, I think I want to be optimistic, but I think it's probably going to be like a 2-0 loss or something like that, because simply just how good Wrexham are, really.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a game where obviously it's a new team for yourselves, isn't it? You're sort of adjusting with the new players that are coming in. It's probably a game just to test that out. You don't really go with any expectations for a win going to Wrexham. I think it's just basically just to try regroup, get a formation together that you all feel suitable, and hopefully you can try frustrate Wrexham and potentially get a point or even a win out of the game. Would you agree?
Yeah, totally agree, to be honest. And I think a lot can change in the next couple of weeks. So still, you could tell there's quite a few unannounced stuff going lists, such as Nigel Tanger. It's quite heavily rumoured that we'll be announcing him in the next couple of days. So I think it's just interesting to see what happens in the next week and a half. Obviously, you don't expect too much, but I think realistically, again, it's just starting as well as we can and just see where we are in a couple of months, really.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
All right, cheers for having me. Thank you.
So Tom's joining me tonight to talk a little bit about Chesterfield. If you want to go and follow their podcast, it is Spy Right Spike for any Chesterfield fans that are watching. Tom, firstly, how have you coped since this sort of transfer window? What are your opinions on it?
Well, I think when the season first ended, I was a bit grateful for the break, to be honest with you, because after Paul Cook came in, as you know, we weren't really in the best form at the back end of last season. We kind of stumbled over the line into the playoffs and then obviously beat yourselves. Got beat by Solihull, probably deservedly. And after that, I just wanted a break. But I've got to say, since then, we've been seeing the signings trickle through over the last few weeks, obviously, and it's made me really, really excited for next season. I've got to say, I think we always knew Paul Cook is a good manager, good coach, and usually if he's allowed to bring in whoever he wants, he gets the recruitment right as well. And I think he's done that so far. I mean, we've signed some players that almost certainly wouldn't be at the club if not for Paul Cook. The likes of Ollie Banks, I don't see dropping down out of the Football League in a million years if Paul Cook wasn't our manager. So, yeah, he's definitely used his contacts and his pulling power from his EFL days, obviously. And yeah, it's really excited.
Now you've got a full summer to invest properly, reflect on the season, bring his own players in, like the likes of Ollie Banks, who was so successful with you back in League Two. I think Chesterfield will have high hopes this season for at least top 3 and potentially winning the league.
Yeah, definitely. I said to you just before we came on, I think if we don't get top 3 as a minimum next season, it's got to be seen as a failure, really. It is a huge advantage getting the home playoff draw, I think, and you learned quite harshly, as did we last season, that the playoffs are a lottery, aren't they? It's a one-off 90-minute game, and literally anything can happen. So, mathematically, if you get top 3, you're going through one less chance to get knocked out by a bit of bad luck or something, aren't you? And you get that extra time to prepare as well. So, it's a big thing, and obviously, it's going to be a bit of a mad scramble for the title next year, isn't it? I mean, you look at some of the teams that have invested heavily. Notts County have signed some really good players. Wrexham aren't going anywhere. They've spent the Hollywood millions, haven't they? And Solihull as well. They've signed some really good players too. So it's not going to be a cakewalk. There's only one automatic spot for grabs at the end of the day, and hopefully we can be one of the teams up there fighting for it. And I think we will. With the recruitment we've done, I can definitely see us at least challenging for the title.
Yeah, what do you think they need to do then, Chesterfield, to really challenge for the title? How they should set up next season to, probably go further than what a Wrexham and Notts County, even a Solihull will do next season? What do you think you need to set up, and what sort of game plan do you think you need to play next season as the plan A?
Well, I think Paul Cook's well known for playing a possession style of football, and I think last year he was trying to do that, and it did come off in the odd game. I thought against you lot in the playoffs we played pretty well, passing the ball around, and the other standout performance as well was Notts County at home when we beat them 3-1, and that's probably the best game we'd played under Cook with that team last year. But I just think there were too many who weren't really suited to the possession style. But in pre-season, we've seen that the players that he has brought in, the likes of Ollie Banks, Darren Alder in midfield. Then on the flanks, Brandon Horton, looking really dangerous. They're all players that can play passing football and can play that sort of fast attacking football that Cook likes. His mantra, I think, is pass, press. That's what he likes. He likes players getting the ball back in midfield, dominating the possession, and just smothering teams that way. So that'll certainly be the plan A. How well it'll do in non-league, I'm not sure. Cook said in the past that he'd once been told, don't try and pass your way out of League Two, it doesn't work. And then in the 2013-14 season, it worked for us and we went up. So I think there's no reason it can't work at this level of football. It's just whether or not the players we've got can be consistent in playing it. And I think if they can be consistent, then we're definitely in the shot at winning the league.
Yeah. What are there any personal concerns for you heading into next season?
It's a good question. I think my only concern is that there's so many teams that potentially could win the league, really. It's always a concern at this level of football that there's only one automatic spot for grabs, and that does mean that every single little bit of bad luck is sort of magnified. In League Two, you can afford to draw 10 games, 15 games through bad luck or whatever, and still go up automatically. But in this league, you sort of have to be almost perfect, don't you, in a way? So yeah, that's my main concern. It's can we be more consistent than a Wrexham, a Notts County, a Solihull, even yourselves or Southend? Can we be more consistent than those teams? And if we can, we'll win the league. And if not, then we won't.
If it came to the worst next season and you had the same injury problems, which we'll all admit is very rare that that's going to happen again, especially at Chesterfield. I don't want to jinx it for you, but how do you think you'd cope with it next season better than this season if that did happen?
Well, I think the recruitment that we've done, we've probably got 2 good players in every position now. The main thing last year, obviously, was Shamanga getting injured. That really did kill our season, to be honest. But in pre-season, we've seen Joe Quigley look very strong. I think he's scored in every game that he's played so far, and he could have had a hat-trick against Bradford. And they were really a week out from starting their actual league campaign and pretty much played the first team. So, Quigley's looking dangerous. I think, obviously, Shamanga will be back soon. Hopefully, Danny Rowe will be as well. So we do have a lot of good forward options. Midfield, we might be a little bit light now after Seydou Khan left to Swindon. But we're not done signing players yet. And there has been I believe, a 34-year-old called Mike Jones who's been on trial with us recently, and he's got over 500 EFL appearances. So I think we could see him coming in as a cover midfield option. And then down the fullback positions, we've got Brandon Horton and Bailey Clements, who've both dropped out of the Football League, and we signed Raheem Shackelford from Maidenhead. So we've got 2 fullbacks, plenty of midfielders, probably another one coming in, and plenty of forward options. So I just think we've got a bigger, better, sort of more well-rounded squad than we did last year.
Yeah, that's something for me, unless you're very, very fortunate. Let's say, for example, like Barrow were when they got promoted, Harrogate. When you're on a small squad, for example, Sutton as well, you have to be very, very fortunate, to have a successful season, as in go for promotion, because if you have one key injury to a player, you struggle. This is where I think Chesterfield, Notts County, Wrexham will all succeed next season, is because if you have a key injury, I think you're better prepared for that this season. For example, you haven't exactly, I don't think you built the side at first around Tishamanga, but it did sort of come to that stage like it would with any sort of team. That team last season was sort of built around Tishamanga, and as soon as he was injured, had that significant injury, you struggled, and you could sort of see the impact that it had, the lack of goals that you had. Quigley wasn't the same player at Chesterfield as what it was at Yeovil. I think this season, if Tishamanga isn't that same player, I think you're better equipped now with more forward options and a better, stronger defence as well to sort of cancel out those lack of goals, which, to be honest, I don't think you're going to struggle on next season, I have to say. No,
definitely. And I think the telling thing for me, and I'm going to keep going back to Cook's 2013-14 team, because that's kind of what we want to replicate, really. I think that season our top scorer was Owen Doyle, and he scored 13 goals. So it shows you Cook's game plan's not really to have one player getting all the goals. He likes to spread it out throughout the team. I think we do have a lot of players who are capable of scoring and assisting goals. So, yeah, I think maybe we'll be outscoring a lot of teams next year, because I think we look pretty solid defensively. I think Hovland coming in goal was massive for us as well, because the one thing we did kind of miss last year was distribution out from the goal. And that's no sort of criticism of Scott Loach. I just think his distribution probably wasn't the best in the world, whereas Hovland's a bit more of a sweeper keeper who likes to play the ball out. So we've got that going for us at the back as well. I think we might need one more centre-half, though, probably, for me.
Dorking away, the first game of the season, been given quite a small allocation, would you say? I think you're sold out, haven't you?
Yeah, I think the original allocation, we thought we were only going to get like 300 tickets, so I was a bit fuming, to be fair, but they've given us a bit more now. I think they've given us like 600, 700, 800, something like that. And I've got my tickets, thankfully, and I'll be down there on the opening day, and knowing Chesterfield will get battered 3-0 probably.
Nah, I'm sure you'll get a win against Dorking. Obviously, Dorking will be up for it, so I think you've got to be prepared for that. But I think Chesterfield next season, if they can get a win against Dorking, sets them up nicely, and hopefully you can get a few goals and maybe be top of the league by 5 p.m. on that Saturday.
That'd be nice.
Tommy, I appreciate you coming on.
No, cheers, Luke. Thanks.
I'm joined by Keane tonight. Dagenham fan, runs a Dagenham fanzine on Twitter. Keane, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, it's good. So, obviously, I think the first thing that we should probably talk about is the transfer business at Dagenham.
Yeah.
What are your impressions on the transfers that you've brought in so far?
Yeah, well, we had a few leave the club, but we've managed to replace them quite quickly. Callum Reynolds and Will Wright left, along with a couple of others. And we've got David Long King in, a good centre-back, as well as also in the spine, we've got Omar Musso in midfield. And we've also got Tavares as well as a fullback, so quite versatile player.
Yeah, Omar Musa's one that sticks out for me personally. When I've seen him play for Weymouth in the past, on paper he doesn't look like a star player. He doesn't look like a player that's been getting high numbers in goals and assists in them sort of like outlets in the previous seasons. However, when I've seen him play, you can sort of tell in a better Dagenham side that. Which realistically
is like his presence in the midfield will really help us. It
will add so much, won't it, for Dagenham this season? And it's something that Dagenham need to do, isn't it? Aim for the playoffs. I don't actually believe that you've actually sustained the playoff spot at the end of the season and had a playoff campaign since you've been relegated from the Football League. Am I correct in saying that?
I think it might have been first season we went down. We got a playoff spot, but. Yeah, no, not in recent seasons.
For you next season, I'm sure that's something that Dagenham will be wanting to aim for, isn't it? The playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, our owners and manager have been clear that if we don't get playoffs, it's a failure. So we missed out by 1 point last season.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting closer season on season, and we've made a few improvements. And it's just consistency, really, because there's games last season where, like, I think it's the last game of the season, Wrexham at home. It was a convincing victory, and it just proved that we can beat these teams, but it's just doing it consistently. And I think that's what separates the top 7 from the rest of the league, mainly.
Extra bit of depth this season, the quality that you've got, that you've brought in. I think Dagenham will certainly be a strong outfit heading into next season. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, we just made a couple of improvements, and halfway through last season, we got Junior Marais in, and he gave us that resurgence that we needed. And I think that's something that our club does well, is to get those players in throughout the season to give us that extra edge to push on. So we might hopefully do that again this season, and hopefully we get close to the playoffs and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I predicted Dagenham to come 7th. Would you take that at the end of the season?
Yeah, definitely. Especially after last season, missing out by 1 point. I think any Dagenham fan would take top 7.
Yeah, for me personally, I don't think Dagenham can really afford not to get in the playoffs this season. When you look at not say the money that they've spent, however, they have spent a fair bit of amount of money. Dagenham every season, I think Dagenham are always predicted to finish in the playoffs, and unfortunately they don't. Where this season, it's got to be a season where Dagenham, sort of sustain a playoff spot. And for me personally, I think they've got enough quality now in the squad, keeping that squad from last season that finished the season very strong. I think we can all agree last season, and then adding to that with greater depth, and not just depth but quality heading into next season.
Yeah, I think like you said, we've got that squad there, a tight knit squad, and a lot of them have played together for a couple of seasons now. So we've kept those players, which we haven't managed to do in years gone by. And I think there is more of a belief now that we deserve a playoff spot. I think the last couple of seasons it's just been a hope that we could break into the top 7, but now I think there is a real expectation and belief that we should be in that top 7. Otherwise, things might have to change come the end of the season.
For you personally, then, how do you feel you will set up next season, formation-wise?
I think Daryl's quite clear in sticking to his philosophy of a 3-5-2, and maybe one just off Paul McCallum supporting him up front. So I think we'll probably stick with that again. It's been we've been talking about it a bit as a fan base. We've got a few centre backs now, and how they would work. They're more commanding centre backs, which is what we've been asking for. But I think Daryl will stick to his philosophy of 3-5-2, quite modern football, playing out for the back, being exciting to watch. Hopefully, we just let fewer goals in this season, and just more consistency. Are
there any potential concerns for you then as a Dagenham fan heading into next season?
I think, like I mentioned there, there's a few individual errors last season in key games that cost us at the back, but we've got Manny Onorisi returning to the club. He came just before the end of the season, really, a month before the end of last season. And if we're getting in from the start, along with Long King at the back, I think that should shore us up there. And there's down the left side, there's question marks with Mauro Valletti and Elliot Johnson, whether they'll be strong enough, but that's a minor thing, really. I think they're both competent players who should get us to the playoffs.
Yeah, Gateshead for you then, first game of the season at Dagenham. Are you confident heading into that game?
Yeah, I think there's always a buzz around the start of the season. I think we started off very well last season. I mean, we won the league in August, I think, but then it just went downhill from there. But I think there's always confidence at the start of the season. And I think where we had the players from last season, not much really changed. Hopefully just carry on the momentum from that last game.
Yeah, you've got a very reasonable start to the season. Obviously, Gateshead, you expect to win that with them just getting promoted. And Gateshead, I think people may disagree, have quite a poor side heading into next season based off the players that they've lost and the players that they've brought in to replace them. Working away, I'm sure it'll be a tough game for yourselves. But then you've got games like Eastleigh away, who've also had their problems off the field too. Dagenham are strong favourites. Maidenhead at home, Yeovil away. During those 5 games, you should hopefully be able to try and get 15 points potentially.
Yeah,
at least probably 10.
Obviously, I hope that happens like it did last season. But I think as a Dagenham fan, you should expect the unexpected. So, beating Wrexham the last game of the season the way we did. I mean, it's against these, I wouldn't say lesser teams, because no teams and easy teams are beating this league. But those teams where we're expected to win, we often don't, or just get a draw and drop points. And then the ones that we aren't expected to win, we end up getting a brilliant victory. So I think on paper, especially in this league, you can't really judge or predict what's going to happen. But as you say, I think we should be getting 15 points from those first 5 games.
Do you feel that you respect this league now for how hard and difficult it is to get out of since Dagenham were relegated from the Football League?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Football League, I think there are clubs in this league that are Football League clubs that shouldn't, like I say, shouldn't be in
I'd
this
even
league,
say Dagenham. I'd agree. I'd probably say Dagenham traditionally.
Yeah, I think it's within the fan base. Some people think that perhaps, we're a non-league team playing in the Football League, and we're not like the biggest club with the biggest fan base. So I think this league, obviously, we want to get out of it, but it is a very difficult league, and it's only got more difficult with the investment with teams like Wrexham and things like that. So I think that's the frustrating thing for us Dagenham fans is if we have this squad and this team maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago, then we'd be like probably challenging for the title. But with teams improving so much, I think it's just getting harder and harder to get out of season on season. Yeah, like as you said, and as I mentioned, you've got these big clubs that, like, they'd say they have a right to be in the Football League because of how big the club they are. And then you've got us like Halifax and Dagenham. And I think, but once we do, hopefully our owners have said this, like with all these struggles the season's gone by, I think once we do eventually, hopefully reach that like Football League, it just make it that much sweeter. And I think being one of those sort of underdog teams makes it better to be a fan.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think like you've mentioned, I think if Dagenham did get promoted, I couldn't see them coming straight back down, probably progressing even further.
No, a few clubs do. Like once they get up to the Football League, often set up Sutton last season.
Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, even Forest Green Rovers, you look at them now, Lincoln City sides that have got out of this league and how far they've progressed. Luton, a prime example of that. They're pushing for the Premiership now. This is how, as soon as you can get out of this league, you're in a very good position to progress up the EFL football system. Yeah, Keane, I really appreciate you coming on.
Right, see ya.
Scunthorpe are a side that are making their debut in the Vanarama National League like many clubs have over the past couple of seasons, including Alden this season. I'm joined by Gareth from Iron Army to talk about Scunthorpe. Gareth, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, very good. Looking forward to the new season. So, let's talk a bit about Scunthorpe then. Mark had a Scunthorpe fan on the other week ago, and he wasn't very confident when you looked at the investment that they've done. However, previously, they've brought in some quite big names, I'd have to say, including obviously Butterfield's come from St Johnson. Are you quite impressed with the business you've done so far?
Yeah, I am. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm happy with it. Still with a couple more signings, I feel, but as it stands right now, I think we've got a team that's capable of staying up.
Yeah, is that your aim then next season? Obviously, we've seen a lot of sides, and it's hard to adjust to the National League, especially when you've never been down in this division before. Is it Scunthorpe's aim to sort of just stabilise in this division?
Yeah, we'll say we've got off-field issues at the moment with the owner, but if we can just stay in the division, and obviously we'd like to bounce straight back up, but we know it's going to be tough. Some big teams down there, and it's not going to be easy. So I'd take a mid-table.
Yeah, you've also got Keith Hill as a manager. How do you rate him so far?
I say he came in last season, and we weren't doing very well. And I was expecting a manager bounce with him, and we didn't really get a bounce. We got lots of draws, but there were no wins. Like managers normally go into clubs and get a few wins, and you think, great, just didn't happen with us. So I think this season we'll see a lot more. I know he's been working him hard pre-season, so maybe judge him a bit more this season.
Yeah, obviously Elliot Whitehouse has come in as well from Forest Green. He's obviously previously been with your rivals, Grimsby. Had quite a high pedigree of a player when he's previously been in the National League, earning promotion with Grimsby before. Andrew Boyce as well from Eastleigh, strong centre half. What's your opinions then on those two?
Andrew Boyce we had before when he was a lot younger, and so he's coming back. And from what I've seen in pre-season, he's been doing well at the back. He's been with George Taft, and they've got a bit of a partnership going on. And Whitehouse in the middle has looked really good as well. I'm quite impressed. He likes to get stuck in, and that's what we need. Somebody to get in there and just do the dirty work.
Yeah,
he breaks play quite well. Yeah,
something that I think all teams need is that sort of player that's willing to do sort of the dirty work within a football side. But it's going to be a difficult season for Scunthorpe based off coming down to the National League, quite a low point total last season. I'm sure it's quite disappointing from a Scunthorpe's fan point of view, like yourself, who follows them everywhere. But heading into this season, Yeovil, first game of the season, do you fancy yourselves for that?
Got to fancy ourselves. We're at home. Like you say, it's first game of the season. It's on BT Sport. And for me, we've got to, we've got to get a win. We've brought the players in, and they've played well pre-season. Watching them, and if we don't get a win, I wouldn't be happy. No, I think we've got to get a win. So,
do you think, from a Scunthorpe's point of view, the playoffs is sort of out of the question?
As a fan, I'm not even thinking about the playoffs. I know we've got like a group of us that have like predicted where we're going to finish, and I've tongue-in-cheek said 7th. But I genuinely don't think we'll finish in the playoffs. If we do, great. But like I say, mid-table for me. Before the signings, I thought we were going to go slip straight through. And I don't think we'll do that now. Mid-table, I'll be happy.
It's the midfield for me at Scunthorpe that I think is going to be strong next season, which is, I think, the key part of the football team, the sort of working hard sort of midfield. Elliot Whitehouse, Butterfield, we've mentioned him. All great players, in my opinion, especially with that sort of Football League pedigree, which you've sort of kept from the previous campaign. And then adding players like Andrew Boyce, who's proven himself at this level. Seems to me that Scunthorpe won't have as disappointing season as what everyone's expecting them to do. Because I still see people now predict Scunthorpe to be relegated or just survive. For me, I think they'll be comfortable from the drop. And I think a mid-table finish for me is probably more realistic from Scunthorpe's point of view. But it's going to be a tough season for you heading into next campaign. But what do you reckon Scunthorpe's identity will be? So formation heading into next season and playing style.
I think we'll be right now we've got one striker at the club. So, which we've been playing like a 4-1-4-1 formation, what we did last time out. But I don't think we'll be defensive. But it's going to be midfield based. We just don't have the strike force. Yeah, we've scored some goals, but our striker's not scored any. Well, we might have scored one actually in pre-season. But we need some more strikers in. For me, I'd play a 4-4-2, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's the reason what Scunthorpe needs to improve from the previous campaign. And you look at Scunthorpe and you look at last season. What else do you think Scunthorpe need to do to not have a disappointing season this season and stabilise this division? What do you think Scunthorpe sort of playing, obviously we've mentioned playing style, what do you think it needs to be for Scunthorpe to sort of aim high this season?
Get rid of their owner. They need to get rid of their owner. Yeah. Genuinely.
Is it that bad up the field?
Yeah. If we get rid of the owner, great. There'll be the fans. There's a lot of fans that are staying away because of the owner. And when he's gone, apparently there's some buyers that are, they're willing to come in, wanting to come in, and we're hoping this week that that's going to get announced. But once the owner goes, the fans will come back. Be a better atmosphere around the ground, a better buzz with the fans, and we just need the owner to go.
Yeah, I think that's quite. We've seen Alden this season. We've seen the sort of boost that they've got from the fans going. I think Scunthorpe, when they came down, went a bit under the radar. I think that's the correct sort of term to use. When you looked at Oldham, and I think everyone was just saying that it was all about Oldham and Lemigan or whatever he's called. Everyone were sort of shying away from the issues that were going on at Scunthorpe. And Scunthorpe sort of, I think, they haven't been resolved, these sort of things going off on the field. And for people like yourselves who do go home and away, it does sort of need to improve drastically, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. Of course it does. And like you say, Oldham were there. Everyone was going on about them because they were ex-Premier League. And, it's, they were ex-Premier League. They're now going into the National League. And, we maybe did slip under the radar a bit because Oldham came down as well. But we both had the same issues with the owners, So it is what it is. It's football. It happens to somebody. There's always a team that it happens to, and you'd never think it'll happen to your team, but it does sometimes, unfortunately.
It happened to quite a lot of big clubs at this level, even your sort of clubs like your Halifaxes and your Torquays who struggled financially, and they found themselves at this level now and sort of at this level for a very long time. And something that, as a Scunthorpe fan, you don't want to see. You're not happy with being a National League club, a non-league club, are you, for the foreseeable future as a Scunthorpe fan? You want to see Scunthorpe back in the Football League and it's disappointing when you see Scunthorpe and how they were always well known for being quite a good run club when they were back in the Championship and one of the smaller clubs in that division. But the reason they were there is because they were secure and they had a good owner. But Gareth, I really appreciate you coming on. It's much appreciated. And if anyone is watching, go check out Iron Army on YouTube.
Cheers, that Luke. Thank you.
Wrexham AFC are a club that will be specifically targeting for the title this season and for, of course, promotion back into the Football League. Over 15 years since Wrexham were last in the Football League. And ever since this investment, there's been a huge sort of relief and sort of positivity going around Wrexham since the investment that they can finally get back to the Football League and progress. The second attempt since the investment is this season. Last season, they unfortunately missed out on promotion in the playoffs, losing to Grimsby. This season, they need to be winning the league. And on tonight, I brought on Tim Edwards from Fearless Inversion, a Wrexham podcast and a Wrexham fanzine. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. How are you? I'm not quite ready for the season to start yet, to be honest.
Oh, I'm very good. A little more confident now with the additions that we've made today. Time of recording for anyone that's interested is the 28th of July on a Thursday. This will be going out a week later. But yeah, talking about Wrexham then heading into next season, what's your thoughts on the transfer activity so far?
Slow but steady. I think, it was all a little bit. There's always this idea that we're going to be chucking money left, right, and centre. There's going to be an avalanche of players queuing up to join us because of the whole sort of clamour around it. With everything that's been going on and the financial attraction and so on. But yeah, he's kind of just tweaking the squad really, because whichever way you look at it, it's a team that finished second with 88 points. Can't need that much doing to it other than a bit of fine tuning, you would think. He's kept the core of the squad of what he wanted. Obviously, he's trimmed it where he's needed to. And added slowly but surely. Obviously, 4 players at the time of this. We just signed Anthony Ford from Oxford United, League One. Winger, 2-year deal, right age. So they're coming slowly. And I would imagine I would hope there's going to be another 2, maybe 3 faces before the start of the season.
Well, not me personally, but I think a lot of fans have been quite surprised about, even Wrexham fans themselves, that Wrexham haven't gone into this window guns blazing, splashing out the cash. Is that something that you're surprised that they haven't been bringing in 6 or 7 players after last season?
Yes and no, because it kind of goes back to literally the point I just made, is that we don't want to do what we've done so many years in a row, which is bring out a massive broom, clean out 12, 15 players and build all over again. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work for us anyway.
Clearly got that sort of identity about them now, Wrexham, compared to the earlier stages of last season. We sort of saw Wrexham last season at the early stages were just throwing a load of superstars out there. For example, the likes of Paul Mullin, who'd signed a strong defence, expected strong defence. However, he did chip quite a lot of goals in early on in the season. However, as the season progressed, you had that January transfer window. You brought in players like Ollie Palmer. We sort of saw that sort of identity that Wrexham are quite a rough side, like to play football, yes, but also are known for just no nonsense and just, hooping it into the box. We saw the weapon that Ben Tozer had last season with the long throws, and having someone like Ollie Palmer, even someone like Paul Mullin in the box, it's scary. And we sort of saw that. For example, Stockport at home last season. Stockport in the early stages of the game were probably the better side, but then all it takes is, throwing from Ben Tozer or something like that, and Wrexham are back on top, and you're getting a goal up, and sort of that sort of excuse to get you out of a certain sticky situation. I have to say, having that to utilise. The only concern for me, I haven't even mentioned Elliot Lee yet, but the only concern for me is having someone like Jordan Davis in that attacking sort of role last season. He was, star man. He was there before the takeover even happened. He's, I think, a fan favourite at Wrexham. I think you'd probably agree with me on that. Bringing in someone like Elliot Lee, who, yes, has quality, and he's proven it with Luton in the lower leagues before. How are you going to fit both players in? And it's the same in quite a lot of positions. For example, Turncliffe coming to join Hayden and Tozer at the back. How are you going to be able to keep all these players in that same side and fit everybody in?
Well, it's that'll be for the manager to figure out. You know, it's a good problem for him to have. It's a problem he didn't necessarily have much of last season, which, you know, whichever way you look at it, maybe proved to be our undoing in one respect, and then there's that lack of depth, if you like. So, yeah, I'm less concerned about the defensive thing because, you know, defenders have a habit of getting injured. You know, they're always in aerial battles, etc., etc. So, you know, that's what happened with Aaron Hayden at the end of the season. You know, if he stays fit, that season might have ended very differently. Might have ended more positive for us. So we've got the depth there. The midfield thing, it's a massive conundrum. You know, it is a massive conundrum because we've got. I'm not going to say an embarrassment of riches, but we've got a really, really solid pool of talent to pick from now midfield wise. You know, James Jones. You know, Luke Young, Lee, Davis. I mean,
the list goes on.
Yeah,
he's still there.
McAlinden's no mug. He's a really good player. Is he going to feature prominently? Probably not. So I generally don't know how it's going to work. You're not going to be dropping Jordan Davis because anybody who gets you more than 20 goals from a midfield position isn't getting dropped. It's just not happening. It's been hard to sort of gauge what these players are going to be like because when you get that chance in pre-season, that's who you focus on first and foremost is these new faces. And yeah, a lot of clubs tend to get a lot of their faces in early so they can get a full pre-season. We've not really had that, so it's been hard to gauge. But again, just mentioned another one, Tom O'Connor as well, really good player that we paid a fee for, but we've not seen the best of him yet because he got injured so soon after coming in. So Bryce Hosanna, you know, wing back, bombing forward. We've got talent, and you know, ultimately, Parkinson and his management team are paid to make those hard decisions. And
Parkinson, for me, I just want to talk a little bit about him as a manager. Last season, the expectation was to win the league. However, we know the National League. I think I didn't predict Wrexham to win the National League last season. I think a lot of people were predicting Stockport, and in the end, Stockport won. Stockport, it was their second sort of season under the new ownership, I would say. So Wrexham were in the same stage as what Stockport were in that second season last season now. So, you know, Wrexham this season, there's no excuses for them not to win the league. They've got by far the, you know, highest money, although they haven't spent, you know, exceedingly as much as what other clubs have. They've still got quality that no other club has to their disposal in this league. For example, Paul Mullin's still there. Ollie Palmer, that strike force could easily compete in League One, never mind League Two, never mind the National League. So, you know, going forward, you sorted next season defensively strong. I think next season there's no excuses for Wrexham not to win the league. However, the one thing that I have to point out, and I don't believe we're going to say Parkinson isn't the right manager for the job at this stage in the season. It probably wouldn't be I don't think any Wrexham fan would say that now. What are your thoughts if you don't start well next season? And I know it's quite unlikely, but if Wrexham have quite a poor start to the season, potentially like Stockport did last season, where I think it was Simon Rusk in charge, what would your opinions be if that did happen, similar to what Stockport did last season? Would it be a managerial change?
Yeah, I would be amazed if the decision wasn't made to make a change because there's been a lot of goodwill towards the owners and the changes in the infrastructure has been made behind the scenes as well as on the pitch. But that goodwill can only go and get you so far. So if it all goes really badly and say we get to middle to the end of October and we're outside the top six, it's not going to be good enough. It won't be good enough. It's as simple as that. You know, let's face it, the only way we're getting out of this division is top spot because we just don't do it by the playoffs. Grimsby game, and it was just like I'd love to say it was a one-off, but then the Dover game I thought was going to be a one-off, although that was regular season. But that was a mental game, you know, the 6-5 thing. I mean, so losing 5-4 to Grimsby, it was just madness, and that's. You know, we can make loads of excuses, and we can. And even Tozer said you haven't seen the best of me yet because he was commuting like long distances, which does have an effect. You know, it would have been nice to have got him up here earlier and settled, but these things happen. So I don't know. I think that they have to look at it, and they have to look at it sensibly. And if we're well off the pack, then the change has to be made, surely.
I would like to also suggest, well, not suggest, but talk a little bit about is the fact that when sides play against Wrexham, for me personally, everyone wants to beat Wrexham, don't they? Last season, I remember, Wrexham Tuesday night at the Share, we really wanted to beat you. I think every side wants to beat Wrexham because of the takeover, because of the expectations for you to win the league. Do you see that as a positive or as a negative?
A bit of both. I mean, without sounding big-headed, when you're a sizable club with a fairly rich history, albeit a distant history now, if you look at the European night from way back when and stuff, there's always that thing, they're a big fish in a small pond. I want to beat you. I want to beat you. And we had loads of days where it was Braintree, Grays Athletic. Everybody wanted to beat you, And then between going into that division for the first time and then the subsequent years that passed, all of a sudden it's like, well, you're not so much of a big fish in a much bigger pond now, because let's be honest, right? The National League is far more competitive than League Two, far more competitive by a country mile, and it's more exciting, as it was proved last season. So we're now at the point where, in a weird way, that the takeover has given another reason for everybody to go, I really want to beat them again. They might not have been asked when we finished 17th or 18th during that COVID hit season. Yeah. It's just Wrexham. Yeah, they'll boost the numbers, they'll swell the coffers at an away day, but that's it. And because of the takeover, it's like, I really hope we beat those Hollywood, buggers. We want to get one over them. And quite rightly, you would. If the shoe was on the other foot, yeah. I'd be the same. I'd be the
jealousy.
Same.
I'll be honest. I'm jealous looking at Wrexham. It's something that I'd love to see happen at Halifax, but it's not going to happen. And I think everyone thinks the same. You look at Wrexham, you think of the investment they've got, not just investment, but exceeding investment, not just things on the field, but off the field, the things that Wrexham are doing with, the stadium, everything that's going around the club is all positive. And, the exposure you're getting with fans and stuff. For example, you're getting Americans, Canadians now, noticing who Wrexham are, and other celebrities too. So, it's something that Wrexham, it makes other clubs jealous of. And I will agree that, and I will admit to it, that it does make me slightly jealous looking at Wrexham.
Yeah, and I get that. But then it's all perception, isn't it? I mean, you look at it and think, can you imagine if Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney had gone and bought, I don't know, Bradford City? So what? Is there much of a challenge there? Probably not. And when the documentary comes out,
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of football fans who will absolutely rip it to shreds and will take the piss. But you know what? If you're just a football fan, well, it doesn't matter if you're in the same, if you're a supporter of a team in the same division, Wrexham. If you're a football fan, I think you'll enjoy it, because it's loads of people taking the mick about the recent trailer, because Ryan Reynolds said it's an underdog story, and I was like, well, it's not an underdog story, because look at all the money you're spending, blah blah blah. There's a much wider context to it in terms of, and I hope it's alluded to, when we were fighting off greedy owners trying to run the club into the ground to build a supermarket, all the stuff, so many. I could be here all day talking to the amount of stories that people have done to save this club. So for us to finally have that good fortune and have this time in the spotlight, I fully understand the jealousy. However, it's like any club. Sometimes you just got to embrace it and go, well, it's us. It's not somebody else. It's us. Let's just go with it. And I've tried to embrace it. There's been a lot of whinges this week about stuff going on off the pitch. There's been a lot of decisions made that fans haven't agreed with. But in the last couple of days, there's been a few positive news stories as well. So the club are getting a lot of things right. Behind the scenes, they're getting a lot of things wrong. But they're getting there. I think they're acknowledging some things and they're trying to get it right. But that's like another pod in its entirety. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird, and it's just odd. I mean, even now, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney are doing they've done the new kit launch and just posted it out, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's the owner's doing it. And previous times that Ryan Reynolds is launching the shirt. Now it's just like as regular as clockwork. And the money that brings in terms of replica shirt sales, it used to be 3 or 4 kids at school who might wear it amongst all the Liverpool and Man United shirts. It's completely different now. It's crazy. And that is that will be the measure of their legacy in the years to come.
Yeah, Tim, I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Not a problem, mate. No worries.
So York City are certainly going to be a side this season that are going to be inspiring to be near the top of the league table after promotion from the National League North. Quite a successful season considering your actual placement, Brad. And you've guessed it probably, we brought on Brad tonight, York City fan, also does media work for him. Brad, how are you doing?
I'm well, mate. Thank you very much for having me.
Firstly, talk us a bit about the players that you brought in.
It's quite interesting, actually. We brought in near enough a new squad compared to last season. We've let a fair few go from last season. Obviously, competing in the National League North, National League, it's going to be a different test for us. And I think, obviously, the reason why we brought so many players in is to obviously make sure that we have a good start, well, a good chance of competing next season. So, as I say, we're not far from the season starting next weekend. So we've had a good fair look at players so far that have come in. A lot of experience, a lot of players that John Askey's worked with previously have come in. So, like in defence, for example, we've kept hold of Maxime Coogan, Sam Sanders from Notts Forest to sign permanently. They kind of paired together well at the back end of last season, but then we've got experience in there. Fraser Kerr from Chesterfield, Adam Crooks from Grimsby. So there's a lot of competition at the back. Up top, we've got options. Scott Bowden's come in from, I can't remember where Scott's come in, Bournemouth.
Yep.
We've got Manny Duku coming in from Scotland. We've got Linnell John Lewis from Grimsby, signed permanently. We've got a lot of players coming in. As I say, I'm just trying to mention a few, but it's really, really exciting heading into the new season. A lot of people probably wouldn't really know what to expect this season as well. It's going to be an exciting one.
Yeah. You've clearly brought in a mix of players from up and down the country. They're obviously all experienced at National League level. That's something that I would like to point out. The likes of Gus Mafuta, even Ryan Folkfield as well from Harrogate seems to be a good addition. Kerr, Whittle. There's so many players that you've brought in this season that are all experienced at this level. That's something that obviously I think York are trying to do heading into next season, is to stabilise in this division. Obviously, try be as far up the table as possible. I'm sure that's something that York want to do. York don't want to be in this division for a long period of time, do they? They want to be in the Football League in the upcoming seasons. But this season it is about stability, I would probably say, if you were a York fan. And it seems to be something that you've done with the players that you've brought in.
Yeah, I think obviously you probably know about the club before. Back-to-back relegations. Obviously, we've spent 5 years in the National League North now. So it's nice to be back in the National League, and I don't think many people would expect us to bounce back straight away. Obviously, back-to-back promotions will be a big ask for clubs. I know some do it, but not always clubs do. But
last time to do it was Salford.
Yeah, Salford. Well, Salford had a lot of money behind them, and I can kind of understand why. Obviously, they've stabilised themselves at League Two level over the last couple of years. But I think this year, mid-table, a lot of people would be happy with. Obviously, the new squad, it's going to take time to gel. Obviously, clubs don't always click straight away sometimes when you get so many new signings coming in through the door. But we've shown some good signs in pre-season, mixed results. We played Selby Town last night and we won 4-0, club local to us, and named a strong side in that for both halves. So we've got Notts County on Saturday in a centenary fixture. Obviously, we're celebrating 100 years as a football club this season. So with Notts County being National League as well, it'll be a good test for us. obviously heading into the league opener against Woking the week after.
Yeah, just to announce, the time of recording is Wednesday, the 27th of July. Obviously, this will probably be coming out the following week. So, yeah, it seems to be quite looking up, I would say, at York this season, getting promoted to the National League. What sign is it then that sticks out for you?
The one for me, Alex Hurst, winger coming in from Port Vale. We've signed him, I think it's on a 2-year deal. Obviously, Port Vale have just gone up last season to League One, and we've got Hurst in for a good period of time. Obviously, he's a young, hungry player. He used to play for Bradford Park Avenue in the National League North, so we've seen him before. But he's looked really good in pre-season. He's one of them tricky wingers that will run at people, take them on, cross the ball in, not afraid to actually fight going forward, really. And I've been really impressed with Alex so far, and hopefully he can kick on this season, get a few goals and assists for us.
Yeah, what would the game plan be then heading into next week? Obviously, it's quite hard to say with the players that you've brought in, but I'm sure as an experienced York fan like you, knowing players inside out, I'll probably say, how would you expect them to set up?
Well, obviously, we've got Woking, and they're kind of a mid-table side every year for the National League. But I don't know. John Askey's got several ways he could line up. I'm not going to go into too many ideas in case anyone watches that could give it away, but I think just the way that he's got us playing football, he likes to get it down on the ground, play football, get crosses into the area. I think if we just obviously playing at home, first game of the season, the last proper game we played competitively was the playoff final against Boston at home, and 7,500 fans at the LNER. Really, really cheering us on that day. I think it'll be another good crowd, maybe 3,000, maybe 4,000. Getting behind the lads. I think playing at home on the first day gives us a really, really good opportunity to maybe get off the board with a win. Hopefully we can do it.
What do you think your strong point will be then heading into next season? What is it for you that York City will be? What will their identity be when sides play against you?
Squad depth, I think. We've got several players who can play in several positions. We've got a player plus a reserve who could probably compete for each other for that position. And we haven't got the smallest of squads and we haven't got the biggest of squads, but we've got a squad that can compete with each other and it'll keep them on the toes. So we should always make sure that whoever performs best in training is obviously going to be in the match day squad on a game day.
Is there any potential weaknesses?
Promoted side, obviously, I know York have always been, especially growing up for me, we've always been either Football League or Conference for a lot of it. So I think what people could fear would be we maybe could bounce back getting relegated, but I don't think we will. I think we're strong enough to compete top half and give it a really good go this season.
Yeah, what would a prediction be then for you heading into next season? What do you think's fair for you as a fan that you think York will be probably able to achieve next season?
I don't want to be too optimistic because obviously I don't want to seem as too cocky. Like we might do well, we might get the playoffs, but some people might think, oh, they're just going to walk back in and expect to finish up there. But realistically, I think we'll finish mid-table. I'd be happy with it. I know a lot of York fans would be happy with mid-table. So somewhere between 10th to 12th, 10th to 14th, something like that. Just as long as we consolidate ourselves this season, give it a really good go. Obviously, we're going to have trips again down south quite regularly this season. The National League's a predominantly Southern League when you look at the pyramid now. Whereas, we've had a lot of smaller trips, so it'll take a lot more out of the players than it would normally. But we've been used to it before, and a lot of the players that come in will be used to it. So it's just about them gelling, getting used to it, and then hopefully we can give it a good go this season.
Finally, then your opening day prediction versus Woking.
A win, 2-0.
2-0 Woking. Brad, I appreciate you coming on.
Cheers, mate.
So that's the ultimate season preview ticked off for the 22-23 season campaign. We had 11 people from each club in total. I'm sure I'll be able to get a fan from each of the other 13 clubs on during the season. If you did enjoy tonight's edition of the podcast, why don't you consider dropping us a sub if you haven't already, and of course drop a like as usual. Thank you to everyone that's tuned into the podcast, and good luck to your club heading into Saturday's game. Thank you.